Hello, you are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio, your global feel good radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 bestselling author. You can find out more about me and my books at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Now, our guest today is Annette Rugolo. Annette Rugolo is the author of Soul Whisperer, Releasing Lost Souls. You can find out more about Annette Rugolo at her website, AnnetteRugolo.com. Welcome, Annette Rugolo.
Thank you, Catherine. Pleasure to be here.
So, Annette, what prompted you to write your book, Soul Whisperer?
Well, I had been releasing spirits, talking to people over 10, 12 years. And one of the things I realized is there's a lot of fear out there about spirits. And a lot of this fear has been created from movies, from books, from ghost stories, that we tell around the campfire. And as I'm doing this work, I realized that these spirits need our help. And so I wrote the book really to get people out of fear of who these spirits are and why they need us.
Very good. Now, I myself am a master healer, 26 years full-time experience. I'm 60 years old. I have been doing energy clearing and releasing negative spiritual energy for about 26 years. And I also write about this in my 10th book, which is about to be published, which is called Reading the Soul. And, recently, Annette, I did a healing with a lady in England who is also a medical intuitive healer. And she had been releasing spirit attachments for some time. And I agree with you, they're not all bad, but it's also not optimal, right? Because you want to be in your own energy. So, right?
Right.
We're going to talk about, what spirit attachments actually are and how, we may have different methods about how we release them.
Right. Yes.
But let's talk about clearing the energy in a home or a room. I know that when I do healing work, when I do any kind of healing work, the first thing I do is clear the energy in the room. And it's funny because I never used to be that great of a housekeeper, but studying and practicing energy healing for so many years has made me really appreciate feng shui, getting rid of clutter and releasing congested energy. So Annette Rugolo, and I also wrote an article about this, the 6 common mistakes of energy healers, the first one of which is you don't clear the energy in the room, which is the first thing you do before you do any healing work. So Annette Rugolo, what's your method for clearing the energy in a room? And why is this so important for everybody, not just energy healers?
Right. So, so when I talk about clearing the energy in the room, it can be spirits, but the other thing I look at is emotional energy that has been created and collected in space, mental energy. So I call it energetic dust. So all of that kind of builds up over time. People, one of the things that I've seen is we call it divorce homes. A couple is in a house, they fight, there's arguing, anger. They get divorced, they leave, but all of the energy that they created stays in that house. So another couple moves in, 2 or 3 years later, they're divorced. And that energy is collected. So it collects and collects and collects, and it's got to be cleared. So the method I use, I work with 24 light frequencies. I work with light. So I studied with a feng shui master, a meditation spiritual master Marie Diamond, and she created these methods of diamond dowsing, inner diamond, diamond feng shui. So I've studied with two of those methods, inner diamond and diamond dowsing. So the inner diamond helps you connect with these 24 light frequencies. So the first thing I do when I go into a space, I open what I call a portal. It's a fourth dimensional doorway between the third and the fifth dimension. I fill the space with light, and these high vibrational light frequencies uplift these lower vibrational frequencies. And the portal, as I open it with that intention, it acts like a vacuum that once this energy is light enough, it's like it sucked in, or it's vacuumed into this portal. The portal transforms it back to light. So we're releasing this energy as light back to the universe. We're not sending dense energy somewhere else to be cleared or taken care of by somebody else. So it's, I call it alchemy. So you bring in a high vibrational frequency to raise the lower vibrational frequencies in a space. And I call it clean slating. You create a clean slate for that space. And that's the first thing. Before I do that, I should say the first thing I do is energetically protect myself. So that's always the first step, as most energy healers do. But that's so my process is working with light frequencies. And I've been doing that since 2001 in some way or another. So I took what I knew from that experience and translated into space clearing.
That's wonderful. Now, I want to point out for our audience, the reason that clearing your space is so crucial is that environment is the most powerful factor. So I'm always using the example of my orchids. If you've been to CatherineCarrigan.com, you'll see photographs of all the beautiful orchids that I raise. Well, you can take the healthiest orchid or the healthiest person and put them in the wrong environment and they will not thrive. So the benefit of clearing your space, even for ordinary people, not just energy healers, is that you are going to be in your own energy. You're going to be in this peaceful, uplifted state. So Annette Rugolo shared her techniques. So I'd like to share some other techniques that you can use to clear the energy in a space. So first thing to understand is, and again, you don't have to be an energy healer to do this. When you want to infuse energy, you move your hand clockwise. When you want to release or remove energy, you move your hand counterclockwise. So what I instruct people to do is point your hand, your dominant hand, to the corner of the room, of each room, and say a prayer. So the prayer that I use is, Heavenly Father, I call on the forces of nature to converge, to balance all detrimental energies and increase all beneficial energies for the benefit of all living beings. I ask that this be done in the name of Jesus Christ. May their will be done. Amen. Now, a couple comments. I grew up in the Christian tradition. I call in the name of Jesus. I respect all spiritual traditions. You can use the words that feel the best for you. Secondly, you want to use the word detrimental, because if you understand energy, there's yin and yang, and yin energy is not bad. So you don't use the word negative, you use the word detrimental. You want to balance the detrimental energies and increase the beneficial energies. So again, you say this prayer. I would say it in every room in your house. Another simple thing that you can do is use sage. Now, clairvoyant people notice that when you sage a room, it actually releases negative spiritual energy out of the room. So again, if you don't want to say a prayer, use sage. What I do is I sage and say prayers, right? And it helps to clear the energy. And similar to Annette, sometimes I'll also visualize like a little energy tornado, sort of moving counterclockwise in each of the rooms in my house or the space. And again, lifting the energy up and out. And then the last thing that you can do is say a prayer and call on your angels and spiritual guides and ask to place angels at each of the main entryways to your home or space. And by placing angels at sort of like sentries at your door, it helps to protect the energy of your space. And I ask that nothing comes in and nothing comes out but unconditional love. So those are some really good ways that you can use. If you are a Reiki master, you can call on all your Reiki masters and infuse a room with Reiki healing energy. So any comments, Annette, about those techniques?
I think there's a lot of amazing techniques that are out there, and I've talked to a lot of people over the years that have created or have used various different things. I think they're all good. Our intention is everything. So when you have a clear intention, an open heart, and work from a place of love, there's so many techniques that are available to us that work.
Yeah,
And it's so exciting to hear so many people really focusing on the energy of their space
yeah.
to uplift it. That's
Now,
wonderful.
I remember when I studied dowsing, probably 20 years ago, and I spent a whole weekend studying dowsing. And I said to the teacher, Joey Korn, at the time, I said, you need to come to my home. And he said, Catherine, I just spent a whole weekend teaching you this. You go home, you clear the house. I said, no, you need to clear the house. Now, I live in Atlanta, Georgia. For those of you history buffs, you may remember that a while ago we had a civil war here. And I live in an area where there was Confederate battles, right? So people died literally right here, right? And so I convinced Joey Korn to come. And I'll never forget, he said, you have a negative vortex in the backyard. And he said, oh my God. He said, I'm so glad you convinced me to come. He said, the last house that I saw like yours, the energy was so bad. The woman had been sick for 20 years and her husband left her, and on and on and on. And he said, the energy is so powerful, it would crack the foundation of the house. And what was really funny about this story was that I didn't tell Joey Korn that I actually had a crack in the foundation of my house. I'd spent thousands of dollars trying to fix this crack. And he identifies exactly where the negative vortex was with dowsing. And then he said a prayer over it. He walked directly to where the crack was in the foundation of my house. And I have not had a problem ever since, which is really, really interesting, right? So again, this stuff actually manifests into material reality. And if you're like myself, you live in an area where there are actual battles, right? And possibly people passed away, it can be a significant issue, right? Another story, I remember years ago, I did a healing on a very good friend, and I remember giving her a healing for her birthday. So I'll never forget, she came over one evening, and the issue she wanted me to work with her on was high blood pressure. So this was a lady in her mid 30s, young lady, exercised all the time, took supplements, didn't understand why she had high blood pressure. Well, when I did the healing with her, it turned out that she had a ghost in her house. And I remember I didn't tell her at the time. I was like, I just said, I need to go to your house. So I brought a friend of mine who was clairvoyant, and the two of us spent a considerable amount of time. And it turned out there was a young woman who had died in their bedroom. And so the spirit was still there. The client was able to confirm this, not the previous owner, but the owner before that. So again, there's many, many things that can happen. So Annette Rugolo, in your work, again, why is it so important that people, just ordinary people, not just energy healers, clear the energy in their space?
Well, as you mentioned, it affects people. They're not always aware of it. I've worked with a lot of people that, because of the energy in their space, have gotten ill. That's I call it lower vibration, detrimental energy, and that energy pulls your energy down. So how it manifests can be very many different ways. The other side of that, and this is my focus with these spirits, as long as a spirit is stuck in our dimension, this is a spirit that died and it didn't go to the light for whatever reason. As long as that spirit is stuck in our dimension, it cannot evolve. So we're about evolving humanity, uplifting the energy of humanity, going into enlightenment, ascension, whatever that looks like, or whatever expansive energy that works for you that you talk about. But we're uplifting the vibration of humanity. And as long as these spirits are stuck in this dimension, they cannot evolve. So I'm looking at it from their perspective too, of they're stuck. And it keeps the vibration of our planet at a lower vibration. So it's not only affects the people in the house, it affects our planet.
Yes. And, you know, going back to the example that I gave of the client with the high blood pressure who didn't realize that she had a, a spirit in her house, the young woman was in such shock because she died of a drug overdose that she was still in the house and her spirit was in the house and hadn't crossed over. So, again, I decided to bring in a clairvoyant friend to assist me with this, and encourage the spirit to go into the light. So, Annette Rugolo, when you find a spirit in a house, how do you encourage that spirit to go into the light?
So again, I open the portal. So mine is actually, I call in these 24 frequencies, and it's actual doorway. I call it a doorway. So the one thing I've learned over the years is I have to be in my heart center, and I connect in with their energy from my heart. And it's like one of the things I learned early on is there is spirit communication. So I open up this connection, communication with the spirit, and start letting them know I'm there to help. And a lot of times when I do this, most of the times, there is the story of why they got stuck is there. Or I feel the energy that has kept them stuck, like the shock, depression, sadness, grief, anger, whatever that strong emotional energy was that they that kept them stuck. I'm I get that information, and again, I'm working with these light frequencies, so I feed them light. I feed them this higher vibrational energy, and I keep asking, what do you need? How can I support you? And I can feel as I'm supporting them, their vibration is lifted. I see them come back into their light. And when their heart or vibration is at a heart level, that means they're ready to go. So it's this heart to heart connection that I have with them that supports them in whatever they need. So a lot of times I get a story of what happened to them. So sometimes there was abuse, sometimes there was, like a lot of times it's shock, like there's this sudden death, and it's just like it shocks them, and they don't. I believe there's the light is there for every soul when they die, but if they're in a state of shock, anger, grief, they're overwhelmed with something, they don't see it. This emotional energy creates a fog around them, and that's what I see or feel when I work with them, and that's what I have to help them release so they can see the portal. um, so it's a beautiful experience to see somebody go home.
Yeah, you know, I can remember years ago, there were two young men who went mountain climbing, okay? And then there was a sudden snowstorm that obviously they didn't expect and they didn't have the equipment, they weren't prepared for. And so there was literally about 100 people combing this mountain side trying to find them because they didn't go home. So one of their friends called me from Texas and said, Catherine, can you please help me locate these people? And I said, okay, well, you know, send me a map. You know, I sort of located the spot on the mountain, but I said, okay, well, you know, you're really not going to be able to find them until the springtime because they're covered under about 10 feet of snow. However, when I communicated, just like you said, their souls were in shock. I think there must have been some kind of avalanche. So they were in shock and they hadn't passed over into the light. So I worked with the spirits to help them cross over into the light so that their souls could be free. Now, another example, you know, and again, this is sometimes a good, you know, a positive thing. Sometimes a loved one passes over, dies, but the people who are left here on earth are not ready to let them go. So, for example, I worked with a young woman and her grandmother passed away. And she and her grandmother had been extremely close. And the young woman really didn't want her grandmother to go away. So the grandmother's energy remained attached to the individual, right? So Annette Rugolo, do you see that also where people who are left behind are sometimes reluctant to let the spirit go? And how do you work with them?
So the first experience I had with that was with my husband.
Mhm.
So it was a very interesting experience. I had a clairvoyant dream one night. This was after we first met. So we've been together for 18 years. But I had this clairvoyant dream, and I was in this house, and it was just filled. The walls were like top to bottom filled with junk. Like it's just heavy, dense energy. And I go into this hallway, and I see this little room in the back, and I see two spirits, a woman and a man. And my thought was, who are these people? How did they get in there? But more important, how are they going to get out? Because there was no doorway out of that room. And the hallway, the door frame was just narrowed because of all the stuff that had collected. So when I tuned into them, I had some help. This is when I was first um, getting familiar with spirit release. My spiritual mentor, she was coming to town, so I told her about it, and she said, well, she tuned in and said, "Oh, that's your husband. They're attached to your husband." So we did a session, and during the session, we found out, and again, information comes through. Here, there was a couple in Siberia they were shamans. They were brutally murdered over 500 years ago. And they had two children, and there was such an emotional attachment. They didn't want to, it was the daughter that didn't want to leave the souls, let the souls of her parents leave. So it created this strong attachment. These souls were passed down in my husband's lineage for 500 years.
Wow.
My husband's dad died in 1989, 1990. My husband had a dream a week or two after he died. His father came to him and said, "I'm sorry, son, I couldn't do it. It's up to you." Tony had no idea what that meant. It's like, what? What couldn't you do? What's up to me? So between my clairvoyant dream and the help of my spiritual mentor, we were able to see and release these two spirits that had been passed down from generation for 500 years.
Wow. And what did you do to release these spirits?
We had to release the emotional attachment. So there was so much emotional just think about, and I always, visualize this, two teenage children watching their parents be brutally murdered in front of them.
Mhm. Right.
Like the shock, the emotional, the grief that those children would have experienced. And it's like they could not let their parents go. So we had to help release that attachment. Um, Everybody who carried these spirits, what it created in them was depression, because there was so much sadness, there was so much grief. So his dad experienced depression. He was starting to experience depression. My husband was. So it was all this heavy, heavy emotional energy. And that's the energy I saw in the house when I had this dream. It was just thick. So it had accumulated. So we had to, again, release that. And she's the one that taught me how to work with light frequencies. So we were both working with this light frequency, and opening a portal then for them to leave. So they left after 500 years. So hopefully, and this is the other piece that I became very passionate about this work, is I don't want to see souls stuck to anybody and being passed down in a lineage for 500 years. So there's an attachment both ways. So somebody here can keep that spirit attached, or somebody not ready to leave that feels they need to take care of somebody. They might stay as an attachment too to somebody. Okay. Um, Another example that I had, this was with my brother. This is another reason, and this is, I've seen this a few times. So my brother died. He was 38. I was 36 at the time. I went back home. I'm originally from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I went back. I was living in Fargo, North Dakota at the time, and I went back to work. And the Monday after I got back, I felt my brother, and I thought he was coming to say goodbye. Well, turned out years later, I found out he had moved in. So again, working with my spiritual teacher, we had a session one time, and she said, "So when did your brother die?" And I had never told her about my brother passing. And she saw him. I said, it was 1989. And then she said, "He's still with you." And he attached to me because we had some karma to clear with my dad. So my brother was 2 years older. I have a sister a year younger, and the three of us, we all had karma with my dad. So we grew up in a house that we felt we were. It was, I would say, difficult. Okay, it's like we were being persecuted, sometimes emotionally, mentally. Um, so my brother's soul didn't want to leave this plane, this dimension, until he cleared this karma with my dad. Because if he left, he didn't clear it before he died, he would have to come back and do it again, right? That's how karma works. So we were able to clear the karma. So what we saw was my dad was a Roman soldier. He's from an Italian lineage. In this lifetime, he's still Italian. And we were in a spiritual community, the three of us. And so he was a Roman soldier that persecuted people in that spiritual community. And we had to forgive him. We had to release the karma. So we did that in the session. And about a week later, I had a dream, another clairvoyant dream, and I'm on a stage with my brother. At his funeral, I was singing with a group on Eagle's Wings. So we're singing on Eagle's Wings on the stage, and some chorus took over for the chorus. He turned to me and he hugged me, like this huge hug, and I woke up crying. It was just the most beautiful healing. Then the other thing, so I always watch for something that happens after a session. So the other thing that happened, he left when he died. He had two girls, 12 and 13. So he missed all of their teenage years. They were both married at the time. They're married and have kids now. So his niece called me a couple weeks later and said, my dad's been showing up in my dreams. I said, oh, really? What are they about? And she said, well, he's showing me that I'm going back to my prom and he's showing me he's there. And he showed me that he was at my wedding. He showed me that he was at my daughter's birth. So all of a sudden his spirit is free and he's reconnecting with his daughters. And it was so beautiful to know that they're healing their pain from the loss of their father.
Now, Annette Rugolo, a lot of our audience is not clairvoyant, so they're not going to be able to see the spirits in a space. But what would someone feel if they came into a space that was not properly cleared, we'll say?
Mm-hmm. I always, I encourage people to just pay attention to how they come into space. Before I was doing this work, I always thought it was me, like it was my energy that was just going into a negative space or something. So part of it is just paying attention. So and a lot of times when you're in a space for a short period of time, you're not going to feel it so much because you're busy, you're active, your mind's active. But what starts happening after you're in a space for a while? Like, how do you feel? And a lot of times when I talk to people, it's like they're in a home like they're fine outside of their home. And then they come home, and after being in there for a couple hours or a day, it's like they feel drained. They can't stay in a positive frame of mind. They feel depleted. They're not sleeping good. With spirits, I always tell people, and this is where a lot of us have shut off. Like, I don't want to hear anything. I don't want to see anything. But it's like, pay attention. A lot of spirits will let us know they're there through electricity, lights flickering. So this is all the ghost stuff. It's like the noises, the furniture moving, doors closing, lights going on and off, electricity going on and off. So then you know for sure you have a spirit. Okay. So there's the spirit that might be there, or it might just be this heavy emotional mental energy that's been created by other people that have lived there before. So there's two aspects of that, I would say.
Yeah. And what I would say for people who are not clairvoyant, what it's going to feel like if you go into a space that needs to be cleared, it's going to feel heavy, maybe a little bit dark. And the word that I would use is congested, like the energy's not really moving, right?
Right. Stagnant.
Stagnant, absolutely. And again, I always talk about there's only 4 problems ever: blocks, congestion, resistance, or interference. So congestion is like, a road, a tree falling down over the road. The energy's not going to flow properly. So here's another way that if you're watching, you can clear the energy. And this is very helpful if you've had emotional trauma in a space. So there's a technique called a burn bowl. So earlier in this broadcast, Annette Rugolo talked about a divorce house. And, maybe you're not on the way to a divorce. Maybe you just had a family argument by the refrigerator, right? I mean, if people live in a house, sooner or later, there's going to be disagreements. Okay. So what you can do, there's several things that you need. You need a ceramic bowl. You need pieces of paper. You need a pen or pencil, and you need a match. So what I encourage people to do is you write down all of the detrimental things that happened in that space. Like, let's say we had a fight by the refrigerator and we were arguing about whatever. Or I remember I was standing by the refrigerator and I got bad news. So you write down everything that you can recall that happened that was, we'll call it unpleasant or unhappy in that space. Once you have recalled everything that you can remember, you literally burn it. And by burning it, you set your intention to release that frequency out of the space. And what's interesting about doing a burn bowl is once you've lifted one layer of energy, sometimes then you are aware of other layers of energy. Then it's like, oh yeah, I remember 10 years ago when this other thing happened. And you keep clearing the energy in that space until it feels absolutely clear. So I would strongly recommend that you clear the energy. I think that everyone, just like you hopefully vacuum every week, while you're doing your house cleaning, clear the energy in your space, right? Clear your energy in your space every week. And then again, if you're moving into a new house, absolutely clear the energy. Maybe you call in a group of friends to clear out the old energy. You may not know what's there, right? And actually bless the house and call in your angels. Again, put angels by the portals and ask that this house be blessed, right? But you can do the burn bowls, and especially after any major negative life event. Another thing that sometimes happens, I can recall years ago, a lady, her husband died in a living room. So sometimes someone passes away in a room, or an elderly person passes away in their home, in their own bed, right? So it's not a negative thing, but the energy, the frequency of that event is still going to be there. So Annette Rugolo, how important is it to clear energy in a space after someone has passed away, even if their soul has gone on into the light?
I think it's always important. I call it residue. So there's always residue energy that is left behind. And just there's always, think about somebody passing, even if they go to the light, even if it's a positive event, there's still some emotional energy. There's still, again, that some energy there that's not of the highest vibration. So you just want to bring something to the highest vibration. So it's clear. Again, I call it clear slate. So we want to keep that clear slate energy in our house, and that continues to support us.
Yes. And one thing you can do is, if you've had a negative event, say, let's say you've had a major illness in the house, like cancer, for example, and all illness is simply slowed down vibration. One of the things you could do is bring in a group of friends, and Annette, we're getting a lot of pops in your audio. So if you can, I don't know if there's something you can do, but you can bring in a group of friends to help you clear the energy in every room in your house, and bring in a group of friends to pray and call in beneficial blessings in every room in your house. So Annette, how helpful is it to bring in a group of friends or loved ones to bless a space?
I've gone into homes before to douse. So I'm a dowser. I clear all kinds of sources of energy in a home. And it's always interesting when I go into a home and there's a positive energy field. And I always ask, what happens here? So a lot of times they'll share, it's like, oh, this is where my meditation group meets. This is where we have a prayer circle. This is where something happens. So there's this group of people that come into a home, and based on what they're doing, they're raising the vibration of that space. Anytime there's a group connection, a group energy, it's exponential. It goes back to religious Christian tradition that says where two or more gather. So it is so important And I think what it does too, it helps us feel like we don't have to do it all by ourselves. To have a group of friends come in and support us in something, I think it's beautiful. It really gets us into a place of collaboration, of support, receiving that support, working together, and understanding that everything we do in that space can uplift it from a positive intention place.
Yes. And again, in addition to our human friends, I'm a big believer in calling in angels. If you go to my website, catherinecarrigan.com, on the left-hand side, on the menu bar, there's a notation called angel photos. And I've got maybe about 80 photos of actual angels in around my home and healing room. And people go, yeah, right, whatever, until you actually see the photos. And there they are. But I'm working with angels in my work. And when you, even if you're not a healer, call in the angels, call in the highest vibrations, call in blessings for yourself and your family. And whoever you are, everyone has spiritual guides. And you can ask your angels to protect yourself, but also to protect your home. So, Annette Rugolo, what does it look like to you clairvoyantly when there's angels in a space?
So I work with, like I said, 24 light frequencies. These are, and when I teach it, I don't talk about angels because it's all energy, it's frequencies. But these are 24 archangels I work with. So the royal blue is Archangel Michael. The emerald green is Archangel Raphael. So everyone has a name. I don't talk about it when I talk about these light frequencies, but when I started dowsing, there's 5 of these angels that I work with through the dowsing, and so there's a cure, a copper coated steel cure that's activated with the intention of what I'm curing, and this archangel energy. This, like, one of them is the royal blue, Archangel Michael. So a lot of times, well, when I first started, and I'm bringing in and placing this stick in the ground, it's like I'm bringing in this royal blue light, this archangel energy, and I started seeing it. It's like, oh, it's here. So it's a 5th dimensional frequency that we're anchoring into the 3rd dimension. So what started happening over the years is more and more people are seeing beyond the 5 physical senses or seeing energy. As I'm doing this for other people, they see this royal blue light. So I remember a couple of years ago, I'm doing this, and there were 3 geopathic stress lines in her backyard. The next day, she had a little gathering. One of her friends who sees energy says, Michelle, do you know you have 3 huge blue angels protecting your yard? So Michelle was thrilled because it confirmed that what I was doing there the day before was somebody saw it. But it's a wonderful confirmation that, yes, these are light frequencies. We see them as angels. We can call them in. But those are the light frequencies that I work with. So they're
Annette Rugolo, I love that you brought up Archangel Michael, and I have to tell this story. This is quite unusual. So I just finished my 10th book, and before I wrote my 10th book, I asked for guidance, and I was told that Archangel Michael was going to be helping me with my 10th book. So I was like, okay, this has never happened to me before. I mean, I'm like every other author. I trudge away, work very hard. So I started praying and meditating with Archangel Michael every day. I wrote that book in a month. My previous book took me a year. My first book took me 3 years. by working by all I did was pray and meditate with Archangel Michael, and I wrote the book in a month. And what was really funny was I wrote an article about this called Writing with Archangel Michael, and I talked about how I just prayed to every morning and meditated with Archangel Michael. And a client of mine who's clairvoyant, she called me up and she said, Catherine, that explains it. Usually I see this pink light around you, but recently when I tune into you, I see this cobalt blue light. Well, that was Archangel Michael. So again, clairvoyant people can actually see these energies.
Yes.
So Annette Rugolo, author of Soul Whisperer, Releasing Lost Souls. Any final thoughts for our audience?
I encourage people to just really, again, try to step out of a place of fear and move into a place of understanding and openness to the energies around us. And like you said, Catherine, knowing that everyone has spirit guides, everyone has some support. We are so supported in our work and what we're doing right now on this planet. And I think just calling them in, trusting that they're there for you.
This is Catherine Carrigan. You've been listening to Annette Rugolo. You can find out more about Annette and her wonderful work at AnnetteRugolo.com. This is Catherine Carrigan, host of the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. You can find out more about me and my work at CatherineCarrigan.com and UnlimitedEnergyNow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. And remember, when you take the time to clear the energy in your space, you and your entire family and everyone around you is going to be uplifted and experience radiant health naturally. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.